This video is made possible thanks to support of our patrons and today's sponsor, Love and Pies.
I'm pregnant.
I'm pretty sure I'm pregnant. I'm pregnant?
I'm pregnant.
I'm pregnant.
I'm pregnant.
In the late 2000s, teen pregnancy rates were falling, but flicking through the TV channels, you would think the exact opposite. Teen pregnancy storylines were popping up left and right, and parents and journalists were scrambling, asking, did Juno glamorize teen pregnancy? Was 16 and pregnant luring young women in with the promise of fame? What can we do to keep our girls pure and safe? Looking back at the disconnect between reality fiction and reality TV, it becomes clear that these teen pregnancy stories weren't reflecting a moral panic, they were feeding it. A deep dive into late 2000s pop culture reveals that this teen mom moral panic actually conceals a conservative agenda to control teen girls' bodies. Teen girls were told to make the right choice while ignoring the factors that inform or limit those choices. I want to look at how TV and film teen moms play into attitudes around gender, class, and race, and whether they reinforce or challenge stereotypes. So I'm gonna lay down some late 2000s cultural context before looking at how fictional narratives like Juno, Glee, Secret Life of an American Teenager, and Degrassi construct the teen mom. Then we'll move on to the MTV reality TV shows 16 and Pregnant and Teen Mom. We'll see how the media represents, or more accurately misrepresents, teen pregnancy, and how 2000s pop culture turned so many young girls into cautionary tales. Hi, I'm Ellen, and you're watching Illiteracy. Today's video is made possible thanks to the support of our patrons and today's sponsor, Love and Pies. Love and Pies is a heartwarming casual mobile game with a cozy, fun, and captivating narrative. I'm a gamer girl, always have been, always will be, and when Love and Pies reached out and I first played the game, I was immediately sucked in. The story is this. Your mom's beloved cafe has burnt down under mysterious circumstances, and it is up to you to rebuild the cafe from the ashes and uncover the truth. Merge items to bake treats, serve customers, and build your dream cafe along the way. I take the decorating decisions very seriously, as you might imagine, and as you can see, my cafe is shaping up to be a lovely, cozy little rustic cafe. I got this dog, and she looks like a little, I don't know, golden retriever, corgi, I'm not quite sure. But I named her Bui, which means yellow in Irish. And so then every time I see her, I'm like, aw, I love her. The game is so cute and wholesome and everything from its aesthetics to its dialogue. And I love the little opportunities for personalization. If I have tempted you with the sweet treat of Love and Pies, you can download using my link, and if you reach day 3 within your first week, you will be rewarded with 200 energy and 50 gems. Thank you, Love and Pies. Chances are, if you grew up in the 2000s, you learned more about pregnancy from TV and film than you learned in a sex ed class. If you even had one, that is. I grew up in Ireland, and the only conversations about sex we had were in our biology class when we were doing the reproduction module. And it seems from researching that I am not alone in this. In America, in the 2000s, where most of the media we'll be talking about today takes place, the Bush era promoted abstinence-only education.
Abstinence for young people is the only certain way to avoid sexually transmitted diseases.
Most teenagers were woefully under and misinformed when it comes to things like contraception, pregnancy, STIs, even periods. And all of that doesn't even cover things like consent, different sexualities, pleasure, etc. In the 2000s, sex ed conversations weren't being had in classrooms. They were broadcast on TV. Many teen pregnancy narratives function as cautionary tales and try to scare teenagers away from sex altogether, which is the exact same aim as abstinence-only education.
What if I want to have sex before I get married?
Well, I guess you just have to be prepared to die.
Don't have sex, because you will get pregnant and die.
Because the media was the main exposure for a lot of teens to sex and pregnancy and everything, I think it's really important to analyze. And even though we'll be talking about the late 2000s, I think nowadays with the rise of the right wing, the defunding of education, the attack on reproductive rights. I think this is still a very important conversation to have, because I always think we should be reflecting on the media that we watch or have watched and like the lessons that we get from it. There had been concerns over teen pregnancy, but in the 2000s, this moral panic had a new focus. In the 90s, the stereotype of the teen welfare queen was weaponized as a reason to end welfare.
Today we are ending welfare as we know it.
And the stereotype was, and still is, heavily racialized and class-based. It has been proven to be false time and time again. But the welfare queen stereotype has been a vessel to peddle race and class anxieties under the guise of concern for teen moms. In the 2000s, the focus moved from welfare to family values. The vast majority of teen pregnancies that were spotlighted in media were happening in white, middle, or upper class families. In 2007, Jamie Lynn Spears, Britney Spears' sister and star of Nickelodeon's Zoe 101, announced that she was pregnant at 16. And then in 2008, Bristol Palin, the daughter of then Republican vice presidential candidate Sarah Palin, announced that she was pregnant. With all of the media and press coverage of teen moms, there was a sense in the 2000s that the US was undergoing a teen pregnancy epidemic.
Teen pregnancy, it's on the rise.
More teen pregnancies over the last year than really in the last 15 or 16 years.
A widely quoted statistic in press coverage was that by 2005, the US had the highest teen pregnancy rate in the industrialized world. But that rate had still fallen dramatically from previous decades. Part of the reason for the US's pregnancy rate was because of abstinence-only education. Abstinence-only education preaches the conservative values of waiting till marriage and abstaining from the hanky-panky altogether. Studies have repeatedly shown that it is not effective at preventing sexual activity, pregnancy, or the spread of STIs.
3/4 of these young people who had pledged virginity until marriage, they had sex before they got married. And they weren't prepared for it.
But from the 80s onwards, it was widely practiced in American schools. And to this day, the US government still spends millions every year on funding abstinence programs. I bring this up because a lot of media will cover purports like it's better to wait message. Both Jamie Lynn Spears and Bristol Palin publicly championed abstinence after their pregnancies. And in press and in TV and film, the responsibility of pregnancy and the burden of this abstinence lies pretty much entirely on the teen girls. Accusations in the late 2000s that media was glamorizing teen pregnancy.
Hollywood is influential. The celebrity glitz and the coolness of it all can be confusing to young girls. They may think that maybe they could have a bit of Hollywood too if they had a little bump.
I think further strips girls and young women of their agency. It infantilizes them to figures who are really easily influenced and can't make informed decisions. The American National Campaign to Prevent Teen Pregnancy consulted with a lot of TV shows, including The Secret Life of the American Teenager, Raising Hope, and Gossip Girl. They also worked with MTV to produce 16 and Pregnant and released the show to schools with accompanying educational materials. So these shows were quite literally being used to educate or scare teenagers. I'd actually be interested to hear if any American or Canadian viewers had to watch 16 and Pregnant in school or Teen Mom, or if you're from a different country, did you also have to watch like a similar kind of show that was made in your country? Nothing was shown to us. We just like didn't talk about it, which feels very Irish. Media narratives misrepresented teen pregnancy as a white middle-class issue. In the US, teen pregnancies mostly happen in minority communities like Native American, Latin American, and African American. And the issue of teen pregnancy is predominantly a class one, especially when we look at it on a global scale.
10% of young women aged 15 to 19 have fallen pregnant at least once. In some countries, it's more than 25%.
According to the United Nations Population Fund, in every region of the world, including high-income countries, girls who are poor, poorly educated, or living in rural areas are at greater risk of becoming pregnant than those who are wealthier, well-educated, or urban. This is true on a global level as well. 95% of the world's births to adolescents aged 15 to 19 take place in developing countries. Teen pregnancy is far more prevalent in the global south, and complications from pregnancy are the leading cause of death for under 18-year-olds. So it is a legitimate cause of concern. However, most of the time in Western countries, teen pregnancy is presented as a moral panic around female sexuality rather than a complex social issue that has roots in poverty, lack of education, access to contraception and abortion, social stigmas, abuse. The majority of teen pregnancies are also the result of age gap relationships, with the fathers several years older than the teen moms. Studies in the 90s found that 2/3 of births to teenage mothers were fathered by men over 20. Those power dynamics are rarely explored or addressed, and instead teen pregnancy is framed in media as these individual problems with female sexuality. Teen moms are still stigmatized and taboo, but whereas young or unwed mothers were kind of brushed aside and hidden away, in the late 2000s, they were very much front and center. In coverage of teen pregnancies like Jamie Lynn Spears or Bristol Palin, the blame is often put on the teen moms as mothers with the sentiment, how did they let this happen?
If you can't keep your daughter under control, how are you going to keep America under control? Like, I don't see how that's going to work.
You're her mother.
And you're her father.
Yeah, but you're the one who's supposed to talk to her about sex.
All of the messaging emphasizes individual responsibility at every turn, and we'll see this throughout the media as well, and it doesn't recognize the government's role or how it's a social issue at all. And when we look at all these narratives, it's clear that they're not actually interested in curbing teen pregnancy through education, through increasing access to healthcare, contraception and abortion, or community support. It's about preserving the ideal American nuclear family unit, repressing female sexuality, and controlling women's bodies. I know this section has been very US focused, but that's because most of the media that we're looking at is American, and a lot of this information holds true for other Western countries as well. But obviously I'm going to shoehorn in an Ireland mention. I think we make quite an interesting case. We had a lot of mother and baby homes, also known as Magdalene laundries, where teen or unwed mothers were basically excommunicated and imprisoned. They were church-run institutions rife with abuse. Babies were taken away from the mothers, and neither the babies nor the mothers were treated very well. And because the Catholic Church was doing shady business, it's believed that the records aren't entirely accurate. So we don't know how many women or babies actually went through these homes. So teen pregnancy was stigmatized to a different degree in Ireland, but between 2000 and 2020, teen pregnancy fell 73%. We only voted to legalize abortion in 2018, and in Ireland, all contraception was illegal until 1980. That damn Catholic Church, man. You know who else was a teen mother? The Virgin Mary. Anyway, this has been a very brief and concise overview of the social, cultural climate of teen pregnancy. It's a very layered and long-standing issue, but for the purpose of our analysis, I think the stage is set. So let's move on to some media.
It's crazy, but I'm a legend, They call me the Cautionary whale.
Juno is the OG teen pregnancy media of the 2000s. Juno revolves around a 16-year-old girl who gets pregnant after sleeping with her friend/love interest Bleecker once. Juno initially goes to terminate the pregnancy.
I'm just calling to procure a hasty abortion.
But ultimately decides to carry the baby and give it up for adoption to an upper middle class married couple. Juno doesn't have this conservative or moralistic agenda that we'll see with some other media, but it sparked this panic among parents that it would encourage teen pregnancy, that it was glamorizing it, and conservatives point to it as this cautionary tale. The perceived boom in teen pregnancy in the late 2000s was dubbed the Juno effect. And again, pregnancy rates were actually down in 2007 and 2008. There was some confusion when Juno first came out as to whether the film was pro-life or pro-choice. Diablo Cody, the writer, has said that she is pro-choice, and when she wrote the film in 2005, there was no intended political message. She also said that she wouldn't write the film again today in the current political climate. I think Juno's decision to keep the baby is viewed as anti-choice because of America's highly divisive views on abortion and the sustained attacks on reproductive rights. I don't think the film frames any of Juno's decisions as the objectively correct choice. I think it frames her decision to give up the baby as the right choice for her. It does show the same tendency as other media to depoliticize teen pregnancy in some aspects. There's no discussion of birth control or why Juno didn't use it. Juno has a very supportive family. She has housing and financial support. She's white. She has access to abortion and healthcare. But because this film isn't trying to educate or warn viewers, I don't think that lack of political engagement is a bad thing. You're going to see what I mean as we go along and dive into some other media. I should say that I don't think art has to have explicit political engagement. I love Juno, but like I said, the very act of writing about teen pregnancy and including abortion becomes political because of the cultural context. The notion of an upper middle class married couple being the right environment to raise a baby is initially promoted. Juno says that she's ill-equipped to raise a child, and as an audience, we're meant to understand that that's because of her maturity, her finances, etc. But the film ends up with an unconventional family unit, with Vanessa deciding to raise the baby on her own. Juno also has a stepmom and a half-sister, so again, that's a turn away from the traditional nuclear unit. When she's getting an ultrasound, the ultrasound tech says,
"See a lot of teenage mothers come through here. It's obviously a poisonous environment to raise a baby in."
What if these adoptive parents turn out to be evil monsters?
Or stage parents.
Maybe they'll do a far shittier job of raising a kid than my dumbass stepdaughter ever would. Have you considered that?
And I think that scene was a great way of tackling the bias around teen pregnancy without the story becoming this cautionary tale. In researching the film's reception, I found something that I thought was really interesting, where Diablo Cody said in an interview that the conversation Gen Z has around the film is a debate about the ethics of private adoption rather than conversations around abortion. I think that really highlights the generational shifts in values and beliefs. I think the relationship of Vanessa and Mark is really interesting in terms of its portrayal of gender, but in analyzing it would be kind of a diversion from the teen pregnancy narrative. So unfortunately, we're going to have to sidestep that for this video. Juno brings up some motifs that we will see time and time again in pregnancy narratives. The girl, in this case Juno, is socially ostracized and laments how her body shows the evidence of her actions, while the boy, Bleecker, gets to walk around and go to prom and live teen life completely normally.
Go to the movies after school and we're gonna donut that flick with the guy who has 18 kids. You wanna come?
Oh, sounds awesome. I got my ultrasound. Are you ashamed that we did it?
No.
Because at least you don't have to have the evidence under your sweater.
His parents don't even find out that he is the father of the baby, so he has a luxury of anonymity that is not afforded to Juno.
Listen, I talked to Dad and Bran, and they said they wouldn't argue out to your folks, so okay. I think we should be cool, you know?
It really spotlights the double standard. This is something that also happens in press coverage. When Jamie Lynn Spears announced that she was pregnant, tabloids were speculating about the identity of the father, and he had the luxury of staying anonymous, at least for a little while. Another trope we'll see pop up again and again is how Juno slept with Bleecker once and got pregnant from it, which is possible, but reinforces the kind of danger around even having sex once. But it does have a lot of differences from other teen mom stories. Juno retains her personality throughout the film. She doesn't go on a redemption arc from a rebel to a reformed, mature young woman, like so many other teen pregnancy narratives. The story feels like it's more about Juno as a character than her pregnancy, and Diablo Cody said the pregnancy was a storytelling tool to explore metamorphosis and coming of age. A big difference between Juno and other media is Juno's agency and desire. We were told that she was the one to initiate sex, and she never expresses regret over it.
With you. I know it wasn't your idea.
Whose idea was it?
Punch that Bleecker kid in the wiener next time I see him.
Mac, come on. You know it wasn't his idea.
The scene where she reveals her pregnancy to her parents subverts our expectations. We expect a huge, angry blow-up, but instead it's funny, it's sincere, and it's pretty subdued. Her dad expresses some disappointment, but goes on to support her.
Boy, I thought you were the kind of girl who knew when to say when.
Whereas in a lot of other teen mom stories, the teen girl may be coerced into sleeping with the guy, and or regret it. She's often shamed by other characters, and all of this frames female sexuality as something unnatural or something that needs to be controlled. But Juno does not do that. Though Juno is seen as sparking this huge teen pregnancy panic, it doesn't act as a warning to teenagers. It's a great story about a teen girl who happens to be pregnant, but its lack of a cautionary tale message makes me wonder if the more conservative stories that we saw come out after this were written as a response to the film to show teen pregnancy in this wholly negative light. So let's look at them.
Quinn's pregnant, but they all think Finn's the father when really it's Pa, and that's what you missed on.
Looking at the dominant fictional narratives of teen pregnancy across the late 2000s, we can see how the stereotype of the teen mom is constructed. I'll discuss some exceptions at the end of the section. Though there were a lot of shows with teen pregnancy storylines, Glee and The Secret Life of the American Teenager both follow very similar stereotypes, so I'm going to take them as case studies. I'm just going to look at the first seasons of both of them, and I know Glee is like a comedy/satire, but I still think it reveals a lot about how the media treated teen pregnancy in the 2000s. In Glee, we have Quinn Fabray, beautiful blonde queen bee, cheerleader, and president of the Celibacy Club. She's religious, and her parents are clearly conservative. She cheated on her boyfriend and had sex once and ended up pregnant. Her boyfriend Finn believes he could be the father from them making out in a hot tub.
We never...
Last month. Hot tub?
We were wearing our swimsuits.
As Jude said, a hot tub is the perfect temperature for sperm. It helps it swim faster.
And even though this plays as a joke, it's still a testament to the lack of sex ed. Quinn becomes an outcast and quickly falls down the social hierarchy as her secret is revealed. She's kicked off the Cheerios.
You're off the Cheerios. I can't have a pregnant girl in my squad. You're a disgrace.
Kicked out of her home. The pregnancy gives her a redemption arc as she moves from this quintessential mean girl to a sympathetic character, and the pregnancy and her fall from grace humanize her.
Why are you being so nice to me? When you start eating for somebody else so that they can grow and be healthy, your relationship to food changes.
I watched Glee growing up, but I never watched Secret Life of the American Teenager, so it was the first time I was watching it for this. It's weird, and dare I say, probably the worst of all of the media in terms of its messaging and its quality.
I'm such a whore.
Well, you're my whore.
We have Amy, who gets pregnant after sleeping with Ricky at band camp. It is the story of the all-American picture-perfect life getting disrupted by one girl's mistake. There's a weird moment in the first episode where a character is like spitting out statistics, and it gives the show this weird like educational tone.
25% of guys your age are having sex.
Guy, gals.
20%. 29% of sexually active 15 to 17-year-old girls have partners 3 to 5 years older.
When Amy's pregnancy is revealed, she's shamed by her peers, by her father. She's no longer a good girl. These girls, like so many other teen moms in fictional narratives, are young, white, and in financially stable homes. The pregnancies are a result of one sexual encounter. Quinn says she only slept with Puck because she was drunk and insecure.
I had sex with you because you got me drunk on wine coolers and I felt fat that day. But it was a mistake.
Amy repeatedly says that the sex was bad.
I didn't exactly realize what was happening until like after 2 seconds, and then it was just over. And it wasn't fun, and definitely not like what you see in the movies, you know, all romantic and stuff.
And these shows portray the teen mom as a fallen woman, a good girl who made one mistake and is being punished for it. They come from conservative families, especially conservative patriarchs, who infantilize their daughters and blame them for getting pregnant.
You are the disappointment here!
Why? Because I'm not a little girl anymore. Because I made a mistake.
Amy's father is super conservative and weird about his daughters. He repeatedly shames the youngest daughter for what she wears.
We don't like being embarrassed by our 13-year-old daughter who insists on dressing like a streetwalker. Neither of my daughters are ready to have sex, and you two will not be ready to have sex for a long time. Ooh, a long, long time.
Financial struggles are presented in a vacuum as this individual problem outside of class structure, where the boys are often kind of panicking about getting a job and how they're going to help pay for the baby. In Glee, Finn feels the pressure to financially provide, and he doesn't want to become like another teen dad in his town.
I've seen the guys around town who had kids in high school. Got no future. I can't become one of those dudes.
In these shows, abortion is discussed, but ultimately not chosen. Quinn immediately shuts it down, even though she hates being pregnant and does not want a baby. Amy goes to a clinic but backs out. In that show, her mom is supportive of any choice that she makes, but most of the characters are anti-choice.
You don't really want to have a baby at 15.
You better not be suggesting she get an abortion.
And some even follow Amy to the clinic to persuade her to keep the baby, which she does. Both these shows also have these like Madonna horror narratives that contrast the good girls with the sluts. In Secret Life of the American Teenager, besides Amy, there's a character that's very similar to Glee's Quinn, who's this Christian blonde who wears a promise ring. And then both of the shows also have these hypersexual Latina characters, which buy into the stereotype that Latina women are more promiscuous than white women.
Are condoms still available through your office?
How do I stop a guy from getting mad at me for saying no?
Just do what I do. Never say no.
In Glee, Santana, and then in Secret Life of the American Teenager, Adrian embody this trope. They're the more sexually liberal girls who make fun of the prudes, and they also function as these temptresses seducing men. Adrian grew up in a single mom household, and it's implied that her promiscuity is the result of her mother's absence while working and also her mom dating around. Then Ricky's promiscuity, on the other hand, is explicitly said to be the result of his father's abuse.
Can you see how these two things are related? Can you see how you're constantly fighting to prove your masculinity all because your father was some sick bastard?
So the sexual desire is framed as something that's unnatural and destructive. Like Juno, we hear time and time again in these narratives the frustration from the girls about how the evidence of their transgression is visible to everyone, but the guys get to walk around with no damage to their reputation, no change to their body. There's also discussion of body image and weight gain, and the girls talk about how they're getting fat. Quinn ends up giving her baby up for adoption. Amy ends up raising it. But overall, the portrayal of teen pregnancy is very negative. It upholds conservative ideas about female sexuality and the need for abstinence, and it acts as warnings to its audience, especially young girls. They send the message that one mistake can ruin your life. They will cost you your body, your social status, your friends, maybe even your family.
Everything else has been taken from me. My popularity, my body. Might as well throw away my education.
And by centering these stories around middle-class white girls, it's completely disconnected from the realities of teen pregnancy and positions these very individual stories outside of any kind of political concerns. There are exceptions that don't follow these stereotypes and patterns. Precious came out in 2009, and it's very much an outlier in terms of its portrayal of teen pregnancy. It centers on a Black teenager whose pregnancy is the result of abuse. She's living in poverty, and she encounters the systemic barriers that other depictions completely gloss over. It shows her fantasizing about being white and how much easier life would be. After her second pregnancy is discovered, she's kicked out of school and joins an alternative school instead. There, her teacher, Miss Rain, encourages her to consider adoption and think about how she'd be able to raise a child, and encourages her to continue pursuing her education. Precious pushes back and says that she's the best person to raise her child. She continues studying and moves to a halfway house. Though tragedy continues to strike, the film mostly ends on a hopeful note, with Precious raising both her children and planning for the future. The narrative doesn't blame Precious for getting pregnant. It's not the result of her transgression or her uncontrolled desires. It's the failure and abuse of a man. The film doesn't function as a cautionary tale. It's a very sad story, but it doesn't have this conservative moral at the end. In Glee, Secret Life of the American Teenager, and other American media from this time period, abortion may be discussed, but it's never ultimately pursued. We do see characters terminate pregnancies in shows from outside of the US. In 2008, the British show Skins had a teen pregnancy storyline in its second season, and the character got an abortion. Degrassi is Canadian and has had several teen pregnancy storylines. Degrassi has been going on for decades, and I feel like it's kind of a joke that anything that can happen has happened in Degrassi. In some of the teen pregnancy storylines, the teen girls decide to have the baby. Sometimes they keep it, sometimes they give it up for adoption, but it's also featured 3 abortion stories. Accidents Will Happen was one such episode and was actually banned in the US for years. These are very different from the teen pregnancy plots in Glee and Secret Life of the American Teenager. But even that Degrassi episode being banned in the US shows the attitudes towards abortion there. So I wanted to mention those examples to illustrate how teen pregnancy stories can be diverse. They can explore different options. They can engage with politics. And as time has gone on, we have seen more nuanced and diverse depictions of teen pregnancy, but because we're focusing on the late 2000s, we're gonna circle back to the juggernaut that is teen mom media at the end. MTV is a major player when it comes to teen mom media, with a TV show that's even called Teen Mom. They also have 16 and Pregnant. 16 and Pregnant follows a different pregnant teenage girl in each episode, and then the spin-off show Teen Mom follows a few of these girls over the course of a few years. In the UK, there was Underage and Pregnant, which was not made by MTV, but is a very similar format. And then there's also Teen Mom UK. It seems like a lot of countries have their kind of 16 and Pregnant Teen Mom variant. The American and British shows that I watched all present teen parenthood very similarly. All of the pregnancies are unplanned, and the representation of teen moms is quite negative. It shows how the unplanned pregnancy is affecting her social life, her body image, her quality of life, how it strains finances and relationships. The show stresses how hard being a teen mom is and portrays narratives where the teen girls must shoulder the majority, if not all, of the domestic labor and child rearing.
She's a month. Come on, it can't be that bad.
I have it so easy and it's just so tough on you. I'm sorry. Excuse me for getting pregnant.
While it does engage with the issues of finances and gender roles, it does so on an individual level. It doesn't widen the context to situate these issues in society and culture. There's no discussion of welfare, of food stamps, of housing, anything like that. It's just kind of struggles around jobs. There are just these kind of offhanded, like vague remarks towards needing money or struggling with money.
Money's tight, but as long as we're careful about what we spend, we'll be fine.
Most of the teen girls featured are from white middle-class families, and an analysis of the demographics found, despite white mothers accounting for only 22% of US teen births, within the first 5 seasons of 16 and Pregnant, white teenage mothers made up more than 2/3 of the show's participants. The girls featured are also younger than the national average in the US. Like I said in the cultural context section, MTV worked with the national campaign to prevent teen pregnancy. Throughout the show and ad breaks, they would advertise links to a website with information about contraception, STIs, etc. In the show, there are these graphics of like school notebooks with animations and explanations, which further shows how 16 and Pregnant was designed to educate the audience. 16 and Pregnant and Teen Mom seem like documentary shows. They seem like they're just these kind of fly-on-the-wall observational documentaries. But the narratives are just as crafted as the fictional ones. If we think of like the potential pool of families to follow, and then the people that are actually chosen, the hours of footage that are edited down to half an hour, you know, the producers have the ability to shape the narrative however they want. So that results in like the racial misrepresentation that we talked about, and then we'll see how the show misrepresents the realities of teen pregnancy even more, which really highlights the editorial manipulation. The show presents teen mothers in this dichotomy of good mothers and bad mothers. The good mothers must be selfless and grow up. They must abandon their teen life, their dreams, their hobbies, their interests. The good mothers are intent on finishing their high school education and pursuing a college one, and they often have to switch career paths away from what they envisioned. Their decision to go to college is always framed as a way to give the baby a better life. And then the bad mothers are portrayed as selfish. They refuse to adapt to mom life and attempt to continue their pre-pregnancy life by partying, dating, and just like shirking responsibility. The portrayal of the teen fathers is overwhelmingly negative. Most of the couples attempt to stay together, and in many episodes the boy will promise that he will be there to support the girl and then like fails to step up. They don't accept responsibility, they don't take on their fair share of labor, or they retain their normal life socializing with friends.
I can still go out and party.
Don't be dumb.
The good fathers are the ones who get jobs to financially provide for the child, and it very much enforces the gender roles of the mom staying home and raising the kids while the father is the breadwinner. And it's important to notice that throughout 16 and Pregnant and Teen Mom, the fathers are present, but the focus is entirely on the mothers. We never hear the father's perspectives or how it impacts them, and the show really sends a message like, even if your boyfriend says that he will support you, he will end up being a deadbeat dad.
So far, Josh isn't keeping up with his side of the deal.
I know Eric really cares about Jordan, but it feels like I'm the only one worrying about her, and I need more support.
And when we see this message time and time again, it's clear that the show is like trying to convince young girls that they shouldn't risk pregnancy at any cost.
First the Air Force, now the prom. This pregnancy is getting in the way of everything.
Like I talked about with the tabloid coverage of Bristol and Sarah Palin, in this show, the pregnancy is often portrayed as a failure of the parents to educate their kids or prevent their pregnancy, maybe by keeping the teens separate or whatever.
She made me switch schools and go live with my dad, and they forbid me to see Eric. But we were in love, so Eric got his mom to help us hang out behind my parents' back.
Parents, especially the moms of the teens, express regret that they didn't do enough to keep their daughter safe, or they didn't talk to her enough. There's no conversation about the lack of sex ed in school curricula.
Prevent pregnancy.
Yeah, you can.
And in all these families, the parents or the grandparents are crucial in the ability to raise a child. It paints this portrait of, overwhelmingly middle-class white families where the parents are able to help out with childcare, finances, and housing, which are the biggest barriers to teen parents. There are also a lot of families where the featured girl's mom was also a teen mom, and they discussed how they wanted to break the cycle. The mother/grandmother says that they never wanted this life for their children. But like everything else, the cycle of teen pregnancy is just framed as it being within their family. It's divorced from the real cycles of poverty, class, lack of education. Birth control is discussed in every single episode, so it's pretty clear that it's something that the producers initiate to capture this conversation on camera. Most of the time they just talk about condoms and how they were never used, and the girls express regret that they didn't use them. But there's no discussion of why, whether they didn't know how to prevent pregnancy, whether they were subject to pressure from their partner, if they didn't feel empowered to advocate for contraception, if they didn't have access to it. And like we talked about in the cultural context, a lot of the couples that are featured have age gaps, with the boys being a lot older, some of them even out of high school.
Gary graduated high school with my older brother, Sean.
And basically all of the girls say that they wish that they had waited for sex.
You and Dad telling me not to have sex and stuff. I mean, y'all were right about that. I wasn't ready.
All of the messaging promotes abstinence. In Teen Mom, one of the teen moms, Farah, decides to go on birth control after giving birth. But instead of being praised for her responsibility, she is shamed by her family for even wanting to have sex again.
Well, let's put it this way. You shouldn't need to have a need for birth control, okay? Don't go out. Don't put yourself in any position where you need birth control.
She's framed as a selfish mother for even wanting to date. She should only want to be at home with her child or work to better herself for her child. The desires and the motivations of the teen girls, whether it be with dating or with career, very quickly takes a backseat to the good of the child. In Teen Mom and in 16 and Pregnant, abortion may be mentioned in passing or in veiled terms, but it's never explicitly discussed as a viable option.
I mean, every option crosses your mind, but I never considered it.
The decision to have the baby is always presented as a choice that these teen girls made of their own free will and agency. Sometimes they talk about pressure from parents, but the show doesn't examine the factors that influence or inform their decision. The MTV teen pregnancy shows encourage the audience to compare your life to what's on screen, and they discourage you from making the same mistakes. I found conflicting studies. Some that said that 16 and Pregnant were responsible for a fall in teen pregnancy, some that said that it had no effect. But the show may have been helpful to some, especially teaching the importance of contraception, but it does not and should not replace actual sex ed, especially because of how it only portrays a very narrow view of teen pregnancy, and one that is divorced from a social and cultural context. And like the fictional narratives, it places all of the burden on the teen girls, encouraging them to be responsible or suffer the consequences. So much of 2000s pop culture misrepresented the actual demographics of teen moms and presents the situation in terms of individual, not state responsibility. By framing it as a moral panic around white middle-class teen girls, it bolsters the beliefs around patriarchal control and the need to control young women and girls' bodies. Paired with the real-life stories of Jamie Lynn Spears and Bristol Palin, it gives the sense that it could happen to you or it could happen to your daughter. They all act as cautionary tales of what happens if you fail to control women. In the almost 18 years since Juno was released, the cultural depictions of teen sex have changed a lot. There's been this pendulum swing to hypersexual teens in shows like Euphoria, Sex Education, Riverdale, Elite, Gossip Girl, and this is a topic that I covered like way back at the beginning of my channel, where I explored the death of like the tween in TV. But modern shows like Sex Education and Big Mouth feature frank conversations around things like consent, different sexualities, desire, puberty, relationships, and feature much more diverse casts. The Florida Project also shows a young mother living in poverty and the systemic difficulties that she faces trying to raise her daughter. But like I said at the start, in the US, the attacks on reproductive rights, Trump's defunding of education, the book bans, all mean that these issues are very much still relevant. Teens may have access to more information with the internet, but that doesn't alleviate the responsibility of parents, governments, or schools to educate them. There was a lot of conversation and media coverage as to whether the reality shows will influence teen girls to get pregnant just to get on TV. But like I said, I think those questions really strip young girls of their agency and like belittle their intelligence. Because of the extremely negative portrayals of teen pregnancy, I really don't think that any of them are glamorizing teen pregnancy or teen moms. I think in like the 2020s, that could be an interesting question to look at in terms of like trad wives and mom influencers and like teen mom vloggers and whatever, or even the fact that Kylie Jenner was pregnant when she was 19 and then gave birth when she was 20. I think so many of these like influencers and celebrities are in very different situations from the majority of teen pregnancies in terms of, you know, their economic situation, in terms of race, etc. So I feel like the panic over like influencers glamorizing teen pregnancy is that same kind of moral panic, just designed to like stoke the fears around female sexuality and agency. Sincere concerns around teen pregnancy would and should be more concerned with the class-based issues, with the healthcare-related issues, with the teen pregnancy that occurs in the global south. But since that's not what people are talking about, it's very much, you know, still that fear of like the all-American girls, the white middle-class girls, like falling prey to their desires. And it's propping up the argument of the need to control these young women's bodies. But I didn't fully explore the modern context because obviously we're looking at like the pop culture of the 2000s. So with that, I'm at the end of my script. All my talking points are out. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do leave a like or a comment or subscribe if you want, but no pressure. You can also support me on Patreon if you so desire. I put up a video there talking about the Book Talk books that I adore after I spent like an hour shitting on the worst Book Talk books. I forgot to mention that I vlogged the like research and conception process for this video on my second channel. And I talked about some research papers that I read, how I decided to structure it. So if you're interested in like a behind the scenes kind of peek, a little peek behind the curtain, that is over on my second channel, Experimental. So thank you very much for watching. I hope that you're having a lovely day, eve, night, whatever it may be. And I will see you in my next video. Bye. Special shout out to Kelly T, Paula Boone, Cecilia D'Arville, and Eric Danielson, as well as all my Sharpay Evans tier patrons. Thank you.